the real theme of my speech will be this: the significance of the perpetual help icon as a special icon. So notice exactly this theme here. The first part of my speech will be dedicated to the meaning of the icon, and the second part, I will try to explain the message of the icon of our Mother of Perpetual Help. That's what I am going to do. Since the icon of perpetual help was entrusted to the Redemptorist, the veneration of our Mother of Perpetual Help was developed mainly in Europe and both Americas. It has been assimilated, but what we may be described as the Western mentality of the preachers and the faithful, marked by dynamism of action, a pragmatic approach to life, and well-developed communication skills. This fact has considerably influenced the perception and interpretation of the message of the sacred image, understood, generally speaking, in terms of spiritual help, notably in an individual's earthly problems. Actually, the painting of our Mother of Perpetual Help is an icon, however, a theological painting deriving from the circle of Eastern spirituality. Its true value and the deepest spiritual message are revealed only in the context of the Byzantine faith and spirituality that produced this icon. Therefore, it is worthwhile acquainting oneself with some elements of the Eastern tradition concerning the icon in order to discover a deeper theological and spiritual message of the image of our Mother of Perpetual Help. The origins of the icon. An icon, in Greek eikon, from Greek eikon, it means picture, image, portrait, is a concept referring to pictures related to the Eastern Church, intended for Christian worship, both in churches and in private houses. While the icon first appeared in the Byzantine Empire, its cultural roots go back much deeper than that, drawing upon a variety of earlier traditions. The Hellenistic tradition, deriving from the Greco-Roman heritage, with ancient Alexandria as one of its magnificent centers, and the Oriental tradition, art forms deriving from Palestine, Asia Minor, Egypt, and Syria. But the above-mentioned tradition were assimilated by the Christian community, which was slowly making an intelligent selection, rejecting those elements and forms that did not harmonize with the gospel teachings or with the spiritual experience of the followers of Christ. The above-mentioned forms were subsequently transformed by the young church, acquiring their own unique features closely linked with the professed faith over the course of the history. The first icon were portraits. The people made icon from 4th to 5th century, representing Christ, the Mother of God, and the saints. A tradition written down in 6th century says that the first icon of Christ, a hieropythos not made by the human hands, was completed while while he was still living on earth. But this is a legend, the famous legend of the king Abgar. While the first icon of the Mother of God are traditionally attributed to St. Luke the Evangelist, he's considered to be an author of 3 types of icons. This is St. Luke. He's considered to be the author of 3 types of icon. The first one is Eleusa. Eleusa, it means virgin of tenderness. The second one, which is attributed to St. Luke, is Hodegetria, she who shows the way or guide. Look at this hand. He shows the Christ who is the way. And the third one is Deisis or Deisis. It means supplication. Mother, supplicate God, Christ. The Constantinian era, when Christianity enjoyed freedom from 4th to 5th century, saw a development of the icon. It is also at that time that the proper conception of the holy picture begins to take shape in Byzantium. Many a time, there were stormy disputes over the conception of the holy picture, iconoclasm, in the course of history. But it was thanks to them and thanks to the ideas and action of saints, the Father of Church, as well as the synods and councils, that the theological and pictorial of the worked out. It combines the classical beauty of harmony, balance, proportions, and concreteness guaranteed by the painting discipline, the so-called canon of the icon, with the spiritual elements, prayer and the liturgical cult. The conception of the icon. To Eastern Christians, an icon is not intended as a decoration of the church or a home. It is not meant to grace religious services, but is, rather, a cult object created for the liturgy and private prayer. It is a sacramental sign of the presence of the triune God, a place of the presence of divine grace. Made according to the iconographic canon, it reveals through the pictorial means, painting, and language, inscriptions, a spiritual world, deified, transformed by the resurrection. It is a window open to eternity, in which Christ, the Blessed Virgin, angels, and saints live. The theology of the icon was developed under the impact of the iconoclastic disputes in Byzantium between 8th and 9th century. The iconoclast, invoking the proscription against making a likeness of God sanctioned in the Old Testament, fought against icons, seeking to prevent the ecclesiastical cult from dangerously approaching to idolatrous practices followed in the pagan religions. The Synod in Trullo and the Second Council of Nicaea were the first to define the essence of the icon and showed that in the incarnation of the Logos, Jesus Christ, took flesh and made its dwelling among the people. Thus one could see it and paint it, representing the Savior's human forms. the theology of the icon. This is a picture about the iconoclasm. They fought against images. The first period was from 727, and the second was from the 813. Theology of the icon. The biblical conception of the image and the dogma of incarnation are the basic foundation of the theological vision of the icon. Already in Old Testament says that man was created in the image and in the likeness of God, Genesis 1:27. Man is therefore an image of God, his living icon. This icon had admittedly been deformed by the fall of the first parents, the original sin. But in the incarnation of the Son of God, Jesus Christ, it was restored to its original state. Christ, the Savior, is the image of the invisible God, a true icon of God. That is why he could say about himself, "Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father." The Old Testament prescription against making material images of God and venerating them, motivated by the risk of idolatry, was thereby abolished and was basically no longer observed in the church. Theodore the Studite, a monk and theologian, argues that in the icon there is no other person except the person of Christ. It is precisely the person impressed as a character through the similarity of form that is viewed and venerated in the icon. The archetype is actually present in the image, but this is a purely personal, relational, spiritual kind of presence. And it is in this presence that the dignity of the icon consists. That is why we can say that by praying before the icon, we are praying directly to Christ. By kissing an icon, we kiss Christ. By bowing before an icon, we are bowing before Christ. The cult of the icon. Christians believe in the presence of Christ both. Okay. The theology of the icon. The biblical conception of the image and the dogma of incarnation, the cult of icon. Christian believes in the presence of Christ both in his icon and in the Eucharist, but in various senses. In the icon, it is recognizable through prayer when the Savior approaches a faithful individual praying before his icon. While in the holy gifts of Eucharist, his presence becomes actually perceptible in the unification with him through the Holy Communion. In the former case, we have to do with the sacramentalium, and in the latter, with the sacrament. Because the icon refers to the archetypes, Christ, the Holy Virgin, or saints, represented in it, and brings them to the mind to mind, it inspires the believer to love them. By contemplating an icon, by communing in faith with the Savior, accessible in an image, a Christian enters into a prayerful dialogue of faith with Him. He thus fulfills his vocation, Christian vocation, which St. Paul describes as follows. For those God foreknew, He also predestinated to be conformed to the image of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. Romans 8:29. Thus, united with Christ, He builds the brotherly communion of the mystical body, the Church, and develops true spirituality. As St. Paul said, "Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices, and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its Creator." Colossians 3:9. Building a spiritual bond with God, in His Church basically consists in becoming like a Savior, in becoming His image. As St. Paul said, "And just as we have borne the image of earthly man, so shall we bear the image of the heavenly man." Colossians 15:49. So it's, in general, some ideas about the theology. You will find more in the digital version, in full version, in your pen drives.